take up outside the presence of the jury?
None on behalf of the state.
All right, let's bring jurors in, please. Further evidence for the state?
Here at this time, the state calls Agent Galloway.
Ms. Shakita?
Please state your name, sir.
Michael Galloway.
How are you employed?
I am employed as an agent with the City County Bureau of Identification.
Can you tell us, we've heard a lot about CCBI at this point now, but can you tell us what some of your duties and responsibilities are at CCBI?
I respond to all crime scenes when requested by a law enforcement agency to collect evidence, fingerprints, photograph, documents. I also perform shooting reconstruction and crime scene reconstruction.
Earlier, Agent Gold had indicated how CCBI got called to the area 441 Allister. Do you recall where you were on May 14th when this call began?
I got a telephone call from Detective Brady to give me a heads up about what kind of scene that we will be going to in the near future. And so as soon as I got this call, me and Agent Gold started heading to Allister Drive.
She had indicated yesterday that a supervisor is, it's routine and it's policy when there is a homicide for a supervisor to come out. Was that you that day?
Yes, ma'am.
And what were some of your responsibilities when you got there on scene?
My responsibility was to coordinate the scene, get the appropriate CCBI personnel to the scene, and divide tasks up. Contact my deputy director if there was additional resources that we may need. Coordinate with the Raleigh Police Department. Make sure that we had signed search warrants. Get the basis of where this investigation is going. And then we go inside the scene to start examining, to piece together the puzzle.
Agent Galloway, how long have you been working with CCBI?
My 19th year.
And was it safe to say this is not the first homicide scene that you've worked?
Yes, ma'am.
Could you estimate over the course of those 19 years maybe how many you've had?
There is, I cannot give a fair and accurate description, but I'm sure it's over 50.
And once you're there, Agent Gold has already testified for the jury about what she was doing and documenting the scene and some of the processing that she did. When you get there, you said that you wanted to make sure that a search warrant had been obtained. To your knowledge, had that been done?
Yes, ma'am.
And where along your involvement were you made aware, if at all, that there actually were two separate scenes?
Shortly after I arrived on the scene, that's when we found out about the homicide scene and then the break-in scene.
And once you had been called out initially by Detective Brady and he had kind of given you an idea of the scene, do you ask for more folks to respond, or what did you do when you realized there was a separate scene?
I found out we had on the second floor, that's when we had a homicide scene. So I assigned Agent Gold to the homicide scene, Agent Ferran to the leasing office downstairs for the break-in scene, and then an additional agent because we had car break-ins out in that area, which at the time we did not know if it was or was not connected.
And so at that point, you've got three different actual agents out there processing different scenes.
Yes, ma'am.
Was your primary responsibility in assisting in the homicide area, or were you kind of going between the scenes?
I was coordinating between the Raleigh Police Department, CCBI, Assistant Agent Gold, and Assistant Agent Ferran.
So at some point, did you also go downstairs into what we've been calling the leasing office?
Yes, ma'am.
When Agent Gold was documenting the upstairs scene, several photographs have been introduced into evidence. Is there another way that you document a homicide scene?
Through video.
And why do you do a video in homicide cases?
A digital video shows it as is. It's one of the first things that we do. It's almost, you got your still photographs and it paints a certain picture, but a video, it pans out, and so you can see basically the whole scene at one time through a series of events the way that we see it as we walk through the scene.
You had indicated that it's one of the first things that you do. Why do you do it first off?
Make sure that it has not been tampered with or contaminated with. And so when we show the video, we are showing the video as we see it once we first get there. So basically you get to see the scene as I see it, untampered, as in through my eyes.
And for example, I think it was yesterday afternoon, Agent Gold said that the two of you put fingerprint powder all over Melissa's bedroom. Would it have been before the walls turned fingerprint powder color?
Yes, it's way before then.
Okay. Have you had occasion to review State's Exhibit 225? Is that the video that was taken that morning?
I believe so, yes ma'am.
And were you the actual person that had the camera?
Yes ma'am.
When you document the scene, you said you want people to be able to see it just as you saw it. Did you edit the video in any way, or leave out certain portions or add certain portions, or is it exactly the video that you took?
It's the exact video that I took.
Here, on this time, the state would move to introduce State's Exhibit 225.
Any objection?
We just review arguments we made previously.
All right, that objection is overruled. It's allowed.
Your Honor, I'd also ask permission to publish it via the projector.
Yes. Via,
No, I'm sorry. Via the television screen.
all right, go ahead, please.
Can you turn it up? looks like maybe you were positioned in different corners of the room to try and show different angles. Is that safe to say?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
When you first started the video, there was a rather large blue and white, almost like bus or RV. What was that?
That was the Raleigh Police Department's command post.
And there was a bunch of yellow tape around the area. What's that?
That's crime scene tape to keep unnecessary people outside and people who have been logged into the crime scene inside.
And it looked like there might be what appeared to be Raleigh police officers sort of at each corner. Is that pretty standard in a case like this?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
Once you took the video there, you said you were assisting both Agents Gold and Foran with their respective processing of the scene. At some point, did you come across something unusual outside the apartment?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you tell us about that?
We were trying to find the point of entry. I looked up and we saw several dryer vents on the outside of the building, and I noticed that some of them were bent. And we were trying to figure out, is it possible for a way that a person can climb or scale up the wall and gain entry through the sliding glass door by going over the balcony? And that's when we looked at the dryer vents.
And specifically, how did you observe them, or how were you able to see them?
Well, you can, from the ground, you can see them, that they were misshaped. And so then I got a ladder, climbed up to get a closer examination of them.
Now, first witness, Judge.
Yes.
I'm going to show you it's already been identified by Agent Gold as States Exhibit 219. You recognize the outside of that at least?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And inside States Exhibit, ooh, excuse me, 219A. Do you recognize that?
Yes, ma'am.
And what is States Exhibit 219A?
This is the dryer vent cover that we took off the building.
And is it in the same condition as when you took it off?
No, ma'am.
Okay. Do you know how the powder, the coloration got on this particular item?
I processed this for any type of latent footprints, fingerprints, so forth.
And with respect to its different condition, how does it appear different than when you saw it?
It appears to be that it's been bent, so better photographs can be taken of than what I did on top of the ladder.
And to your knowledge, was anything requested of this item after you took it into custody?
That I believe Agent Gold had somebody compare that to see if it's comparable to footwear impressions.
Okay. In addition to taking it into evidence, you said that when you were down on the ground, you could notice that there appeared to be something there. Did you take photographs to document what you found?
Yes, ma'am, I did.
Let me approach and show Agent Galloway some photographs.
Yes.
First I'm going to show you States Exhibits 226, 227, 228. Ask if you recognize those.
Yes, ma'am, I do.
And what are 226, 227, and 228?
They are the dryer vents that was located by the balcony railing of the apartment complex.
And how many in total dryer vents were around Melissa's apartment, if you recall?
I believe 3.
And when you look, say you're looking straight up from the outside, how many were on the right and how many were on the left?
You got 1 on the right and 2 on the left.
And these right here, are they on the right or the left? This is on the right or the left?
The right.
Okay. And these 3, do they accurately represent the way you saw them prior to doing anything that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Nate, next, States Exhibits 229, 230, 231, and 232. What are those 4 photographs of?
These are photographs of the driver vent on the right-hand side after they had been processed with magnetic fingerprint powder.
And tell us how you were actually able to do that as high up as these are.
A very tall ladder. Got a ladder where I can safely get to it. Magnetic powder, we use a magnetic wand to apply the powder to the surface.
And all of these, are they sort of farther up and then close-ups of the same vent after you had processed it with the magnetic power?
Yes, ma'am.
And would they help to illustrate that portion of your analysis that day?
Yes, ma'am.
Next, I'm going to show you States Exhibit 233 and ask if you recognize that.
Yes, ma'am.
And what is States Exhibit 233?
It is a photograph of the driver vent that I processed for the footwear impression, but this time it has what we call a scale or ruler, so that our photographer can make it a one-to-one or actual size. So they get the footwear impression, they got the footwear, it'd be easier for them to match it up.
And so these 4, or these initial ones that I showed you, they illustrate the way it looked, but States Exhibit 233, is that a photograph that you took yourself?
Yes, ma'am.
And is it to scale, that is, you put a scale next to it to make sure you could document the size of the suspected footwear impression you saw?
That's correct.
Here, at this time, the state would move to introduce States Exhibit 226 through 232 for illustrative purposes and States Exhibit 233 for substantive purposes.
Any objection? All right, so 226 through 232 are allowed for illustrative, and 233 is for substantive.
States exhibits now, starting with 234, 235, and 236. Do you recognize those?
I do.
And what are those?
These are, the first one is a photograph of the 2 driver vents that on the left-hand side, and then it concentrates on the driver vent that is bent.
And so both States Exhibit 235 and 236, to be clear, is the same vent that appears bent on this 234.
That is correct.
And again, would they help to illustrate the way the 2 overview looked, and then the one that you noticed was bent on the left-hand side?
Yes, ma'am.
Here at this time, the state would move to introduce 234 through 236 for illustrative purposes.
Any objection? They are allowed.
Permission to publish it via the television.
Yes.
May Agent Galloway stand?
Yes, please.
Agent Galloway, 226. Can you tell us where you're taking this photograph from?
I am standing on the ladder right beside the driver vent that's located right beside the balcony.
Okay. And this is the one on the right-hand side?
On the right-hand side.
227? Is that just a different angle?
That's a different angle, yes, ma'am.
And can you tell us what's here on the left-hand side of the photograph in the darker color?
This is the balcony railing to where the homicide scene was located.
And just below this mark here, what would this portion be?
That would be the leasing office area.
And you said you got on a ladder. Do you recall how tall the ladder was?
15 feet, maybe?
And could you estimate how high off the ground the vent itself was?
Roughly, probably about 12 or so feet.
States Exhibit 228? And is that the same vent, just a different angle?
Yes, ma'am.
And 229. Now, can you describe what you've done to 229?
State Exhibit 229, this is when a photograph after it's been processed for any type of impressions.
And you had described that you actually have magnetic power that's on a magnetic brush. Does that help when you're up in there
Yes,
to do
ma'am.
it? And other than placing the magnetic powder on there, did you do anything to change this vent in any way?
No, ma'am.
For example, you talked about it appears to be flattened or bent now.
Right.
Is that the exact same condition when you first found it?
Yes, ma'am.
States Exhibit 230, is that the same vent?
This is the same vent, yes, ma'am.
And 231.
This is a photograph, a closer up photograph of this impression.
And can you describe for the jury the area that you noticed that you at least suspected there may be some sort of shoe or footprint?
It's captured all around, almost the whole photograph is going to be some type of footwear impression. This diamond, that is the natural mark, but all these little lines coming through, that's going to be part of the footwear impression.
And can you outline that diamond again? Just, you said that was actually on there?
Yes, ma'am.
And can you outline it with your finger just so the jury can see? And 232. Is that even closer up?
This is a closer photograph of it. Yes, ma'am.
And when you noticed that the vent itself appeared dent, could you see anything with your naked eye in terms of a suspected footwear impression?
No, ma'am, I not.
Was it just the fact that it was dented that you wanted to look?
Yes, ma'am.
State's Exhibit 233.
This is a photograph of the vent with the scale.
And 234.
And this is the left-hand side of the apartment building.
And to be clear, up here right under the numbers 234, those sort of slats, what is that?
That is the balcony for Ms. Huggins' apartment.
And right below that, would that be the leasing office?
Yes, ma'am.
235.
This is going to be the vent that is closest to the apartment building.
And 236.
And this is going to be a top view.
And did you do anything to try to determine whether or not there were any suspected footwear on this particular vent?
Yes, ma'am. It was processed for the same way that the other vent was.
And were you able to develop anything that was of value to you?
There was nothing on there. No, ma'am.
Had you been able to determine or develop anything that you thought of value, would you have also taken the vent that's pictured in 236?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Agent Galloway, there on that same day, were you assisting, or tell us kind of generally speaking what you were doing? We heard that I think folks were there till almost midnight that night. Is
Yes,
that
ma'am.
right?
Yes, ma'am. I was assisting Agent Ferran and Agent Gold with processing the scene, trying to collect any type of evidence and getting to a point where we can stop and pick up to the next day.
And so we've obviously introduced a lot of items that you can see around the courtroom. Do you recognize some of them as the items that were in Melissa's apartment?
Yes, ma'am.
And if there were any questions, would you assist in helping collect those items?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you yourself, other than that processing of the events, do any processing yourself at the scene that first day?
I assisted Agent Gold into processing, but nothing, everything would have been included in her report of what was done.
And downstairs with Agent Foran, were you assisting her if she needed some assistance?
Yes, ma'am.
Earlier, Agent Gold had indicated that she went into the leasing office and noticed something unusual about the carpet. Did you have occasion to see the carpet as well?
Yes, I did.
And what did you notice about the carpet?
There were several very visible footwear impressions that were in the carpet.
And to your knowledge, was Agent Foran responsible for trying to document that?
That's correct.
At the end of the day, when you all were finished, was the Raleigh Police Department still holding that building as a crime scene?
They were.
And did you have occasion to come back?
The next day, yes, ma'am.
And what were some of your duties and responsibilities the next day?
The next day, once again, I coordinated with the Raleigh Police Department with Agent Ferran, Agent Gold, and I brought in Agent Thompson to further assist and make sure that we did not miss any type of evidence. Sometimes when you go back to the scene, you got fresher eyes, and you can pick up a little bit better detail.
And were you also, you had described that you had assigned another agent to do the car break-ins. Were you in communication with that agent as well?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you have any other responsibilities for processing the scene there in Melissa Huggins-Jones' apartment?
No, ma'am.
And once items, for example, that Agent Gold or Agent Foran has collected into evidence, would you assist them in any further processing that was done at the lab?
No, ma'am.
Mayor, we approach.
Yes.
Agent Kelly, I'm going to show you State's Exhibit 234, the one with the two dryer vents on the left-hand side. Would you say that they are about the same height as the one on the right-hand side?
Yes, ma'am.
Let me approach the clock.
Yes.
But you would say that they're about the same height?
Yes, ma'am.
One second. '61 that's already been introduced into evidence. Looking at 61, is that an overview of the one on the right-hand side?
Yes, ma'am, it is.
And if I may publish that with Agent Calloway, Judge.
Yes.
Agent Galloway, it's kind of hard to see in the way the sunlight hits the vent, but would you have put your ladder up in that general vicinity over the window, or where would you have positioned yourself?
I put it closest, right underneath the vent, and climb up high enough so the ladder will be slightly below the vent, but where I can climb up so I can take a photograph over the vent.
Galloway, is that the ladder that you used that day?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't have any further questions, Judge.
Cross-examination, Ms. D.
Good morning.
Inside the apartment, we've seen that there are times where you will measure the height of various items in the room, correct? So,
Sorry.
for instance, there will be a measurement up the wall to show the height of different things in the room.
Inside from previous testimony?
Well, it's a general question, just to
okay.
say that, you know, do you sometimes take measurements to help to answer some of these questions about how high things might have been?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you did you measure the height of the vents in this case?
In this case, I did not measure the height of the vent.
Okay. And the you have told us that as far as the vents on the left side went, you processed them in a similar manner. You processed the one vent on the left side that was dented in a similar manner to the way that you processed the vent from the right, which we now have in evidence.
Yes, ma'am.
But you didn't collect that.
There was, when I processed this vent, nothing was produced from it.
And so you didn't collect it?
That's right.
And you also didn't take any pictures of it after it had been processed?
No, ma'am.
I don't know anything further going.
Mr. Keel?
No, sir.
All right, thank you, sir. You may step down.
May you be released.
Yes, any objection? Sure. Sir, you're released from your subpoena. You're free to go.
Thank you.
Collect those photographs. Mr. Wild calls next.
Call agent. Chris Hill next, please.
The testimony you give this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but truth, so help you God.
I do.
Thank you, sir. Please be seated.
Mr. Waller?
Thank you, Your Honor. Agent Hill, good morning, sir.
Good morning.
Will you please state your name for the record?
My name is Chris Hill.
And Agent Hill, how are you employed?
I'm a supervisor with the City County Bureau of Identification.
And as a supervisor with and is that CCBI for short?
Yes, sir.
As a supervisor for CCBI, what are your duties and responsibilities, sir?
Along with crime scene work, I also supervise a squad of 4 or 5 agents. Part of the crime scene part is I will respond to scenes, process what needs to be processed, and collect evidence.
And we've heard some testimony that if there's a homicide scene, a supervisor has to be involved with the case as well. Is that right, sir?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and as a supervisor now, is that one of your duties and responsibilities as well to respond to homicide scenes?
Yes, sir.
Turning your attention back to May 15th of 2013, were you a supervisor with CCBI at that point?
Yes, sir, I was.
And on May 15th of 2013, were you asked to be involved in the homicide of Miss Melissa Huggins-Jones?
Yes, sir, I was.
Investigation of it.
Yes, sir.
Okay. What was your first duty in regards to the investigation of that homicide, Agent Hill?
I responded to the Office of the Medical Examiner to view the autopsy and also collect evidence.
And why do agents from CCBI respond to an autopsy?
Typically, the evidence that's collected from the autopsy is turned over to us, being that we're the primary forensic investigative agency. And the evidence is then turned over to the primary case agent, who was Agent Gold at the time, who does additional processing of that
Where
evidence.
is the medical examiner's office, Agent Hill?
On District Drive here in Raleigh.
Tell us a little bit about what you did when you arrived there to the medical examiner's office.
Basically, after I arrived, I meet with any law enforcement officers that are there, which at this time was Detective Morris. I also meet with the medical examiner, who basically turns over all the evidence that they collected during the autopsy. And typically, they'll give us a brief rundown of what they found.
And what were the general findings in regards to Miss Huggins-Jones' case?
Actually, I wasn't there for that part of this, this autopsy. I got there a little bit later, and I was there more or less to collect the evidence and to do postmortem prints on the decedent's hands and feet.
And we'll talk about the evidence that you collected in a moment, but tell us a little bit about why you collect postmortem prints.
These prints are used as standards, so when we get prints from a residence or from the scene, we can eliminate those prints as being the decedents or the victims. Or.
And is that something you do standard in any homicide case?
Yes.
And were those postmortem prints collected that day, sir?
Yes, they were.
And how do you go about collecting those prints?
It's basically we use our fingerprint powder, and what we'll do is we'll put the powder on their hands, and then we'll use what we call contact paper, which is kind of similar to shelving paper, like you might use under your cabinets or in your closets. But we'll use that type of paper, and what we'll do is we'll put the paper on the hand, and when we pull the paper off, it has all the ridge details of the hands and fingers.
And then are those prints collected and submitted into evidence as well?
Yes, sir, they are.
In regards to the evidence that you collected there that day, Agent Hill, can you describe that for us?
What I collected was the decedent's clothing, which was a shirt, pair of pants, some socks, also some fingernail clippings that the medical examiner took, and the postmortem prints.
Well, let's try that. Once you collect those items of clothing, what do you do with them?
Basically, the medical examiner has already sealed them up in a bag. So what I'll typically do is I'll transport those sealed bags back to our office. If the clothing has a sufficient amount of blood on it, what we'll do is we'll open the bags and we'll dry them in our what we call our P5 room, which is basically a room dedicated for drying bloody articles. We'll secure them in that room for till they dry, and then the primary case agent will remove them and repackage them.
And while you were at the autopsy, did you see Miss Huggins-Jones' clothing?
Yeah, no, they were already packaged.
Okay. Did you see them at a later time?
Yes, when I probably hung them up in the P5 room.
Okay. Any other items you collected there from the autopsy, Agent Hill?
Yes, actually, there was also a sexual assault evidence collection kit performed on the decedent by the medical examiner. That kit was turned over to me also.
And why was that kit collected?
I think it's pretty much just kind of standard practice for cases like this.
And to your knowledge, at that point, had there been any allegation that Miss Huggins-Jones was sexually assaulted?
At that point, I do not know.
And since then, have you learned that was not the case?
Yes.
May I approach the witness, Your Honor?
Yes.
Going to hand you what has previously been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 30. State's Exhibit 30, do you recognize what that item is, sir?
Yes, sir. This is the sexual assault evidence collection kit that was turned over to me.
Okay, and it was turned over to you at the medical examiner's office.
Yes, sir.
And then did you submit it to the state crime lab?
It would have been forwarded to Agent Gold, please.
Any changes?
Agent Gold.
Any changes or alterations to that box since the time in which you collected it, Agent Hill?
It looks like it has been open since that time.
Okay, and then as part of this state crime lab's processing, are they the ones that in fact examine the contents of State's Exhibit 30?
Yes.
Thank you, sir. I'm going to hand you what is now being marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 237. If you'll take a look at 237 and tell me if you recognize what the contents of that bag are.
This is the decedent's shirt that was collected from that.
And what identifying information is on that bag, sir, that leads you to that statement?
It has the item number, or the CCBI item number, description of the clothing, the Raleigh Police Department and the CCBI case numbers, the decedent's name, and basically the investigators.
And does it have is there any identifying information in terms of your identifying information on that bag?
No, sir, it's not.
But you're the one that picked that up from the medical examiner's office.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then you said you took it to the lab for processing, at which time it was taken out of the bag and placed for drying.
Yes, sir.
Why do you do that, Agent Hill?
Basically, the purpose behind drying is if you leave bloody clothing wet, it increases the chance of the blood putrefying, which will destroy any evidence that can be obtained from that blood.
What do you mean by putrefying?
Basically, it rots. It'll get moldy and it'll just rot, and it destroys all the evidence that can be DNA evidence that can be obtained from it.
And you mentioned there is an orange, is there an orange biohazard sticker on this bag as well?
Yes, sir, there is.
I'm going to hand you 237A and ask you, is that 237?
237.
I'm going to hand you State's Exhibit sticker 237A, and if you will remove the contents of that bag and put 237A sticker on that bag. On the contents. Now that you have the contents of 237 removed, what does 237A appear to be, Agent Hill?
It appears to be the shirt that was previously described, the NC State shirt.
And is that the shirt that you took back to the lab and took out of the autopsy bag for further processing?
Yes.
And at this point, does it appear to be in the same or substantially same condition as when you saw it back in the lab?
It appears to be, yes.
Can you tell if that item was sent off to SBI for any further processing?
Typically, they attach a piece of paper. They staple it inside. I don't necessarily see that right now, so I don't really know for a fact that.
There's been testimony earlier that there's a SBI sticker that was placed on an article of clothing. If it was processed, you don't see that sticker on there.
I do not know at this time, but it's a little hard to see inside of it right now.
Your Honor, at this time I would ask to introduce State's Exhibit 237 and 237A as evidence.
Any objection? It's allowed.
Well,
No.
let's go ahead and publish. Permission to go ahead and publish State's Exhibit 237A.
Yes, sir.
And permission for Agent Hill to step down and show that shirt to the members of the jury.
Yes, sir.
Agent Hill, while you're showing that shirt to the members of the jury, I've got a few questions for you.
Okay.
The shirt after it dried, does it appear to have dried blood on it too?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And anything else you noticed about that shirt, Agent Hill?
There appears to be several holes in the shirt.
Where are those holes in the shirt located?
There's one in the back of the left arm. There are a couple in the right chest area. And there's a very small one in the left shoulder area.
Does the shirt appear to be inside out in the condition
Yes.
in which you're looking at it now? Any other puncture wounds that you see there?
Not that I can tell other than those.
Thank you, sir. And if you can go ahead and put 237A back in the bag. The holes that you saw there in that shirt, 237A, Agent Hill, did they all appear to be in the upper portion of that shirt,
Yes, sir.
around the neckline and shoulder line?
Yes, sir.
I'm going to hand you what has now been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit 238. And if you'll take a look at 238 and tell me if you recognize what that item is.
This is the pants and the socks that were collected during the autopsy.
And from that bag, how can you tell it's pants and socks?
Just like the previous one, it has the CCBI item number, a description of what's inside, the case numbers, both the Raleigh and the CCBI case number, the decedent's name, and the investigators involved.
Agent Hill, I'll ask if you can open 238. And again, does it have the orange biohazard sticker on it?
It does have the orange biohazard sticker on it. Okay.
I want to hand you 238A. If you'll place 238A on the black pants. And I'll hand you 238B and 238C, and if you'll place those on the individual socks. Thanks, sir.
All right.
238A, what does that appear to be, sir?
Some black pants.
And are those pants that you would have received from the medical examiner's office
Yes.
and taken back to the lab for visual examination?
Yes, sir.
Any changes or alterations to State's Exhibit 238A that you can see?
No, sir.
And then the socks, can you describe 238B and C for us?
Looks like 2 Under Armour white socks with blue logos on them.
Any changes or alterations to those items, sir?
No, sir.
And would they have been packaged with the pants?
If they were collected, if the ME's office would have packaged them all together, they would probably stay together.
Your Honor, at this time I would ask to introduce State's Exhibit 238, 238A, and 238B and C.
Any objection?
No, sir.
They are allowed.
And permission for Agent Hill to step down and publish those as well.
Yes, sir.
Agent Hill, in examining those items back in 2013 and again here today, when you removed them from the bag, do you see any holes in the pants or even in the socks?
No, sir.
Thank you, sir. If you can put those back in the bag as well. May I have just one?
Yes.
Well, I want to move, after attending the autopsy and bringing those clothes back to the lab, did you have any other part in the investigation on May 15th of 2013?
No, sir, not on May 15th.
Let's move to May 16th of 2013. Did you have any investigation, were you involved in the investigation on that day, sir?
Yes, sir. The Raleigh Police Department requested me to return back out to 441 Allister Drive in reference to articles they found in the fence line across the street from the apartment building.
What did that item, and did you respond there to that scene that day, sir?
Yes, sir, I did.
What time did you get out there?
I responded around about 10:50 that morning.
Okay, that morning. And when you arrived there at the apartment complex, what did you do?
I met with Detective Brady, and he basically gave me a brief rundown, that they found a Victoria's Secret box and a iPhone box located on the other side, or on the 440 side of the fence across the street from the apartment building.
What did you do once you gathered that information?
Basically, what I did was I photographed the area. Then I would photograph the items of evidence that they found. I also swabbed the fenced area where they were found in the area for any possible contact DNA where somebody might have jumped over the fence. After doing that, I collected the items and brought them back to CCBI for Agent Gold.
Let me approach the witness, right?
Yes.
Agent Hill, I want to show you what has previously been identified as State's Exhibit number 50. If you'll take a look at State's Exhibit number 50 and tell me if you recognize what that bag is.
This is the pink Victoria's Secret box containing a metal bracelet and one pink iTunes card.
And how are you able to tell that's the contents of that bag?
Based off of the evidence label that's located on the evidence.
If you will remove the contents of State's Exhibit 50.
Okay.
What two objects do you find there in State's Exhibit 50?
A pink iTunes gift card and a pink Victoria's Secret box containing a metal ring bracelet.
Inside the Victoria's Secret box there is
Yes, sir.
a bracelet. Does it appear, Agent Hill, that there has been processing performed on those iTunes cards? The iTunes card in the Victoria's Secret box.
Yes, sir. They do. Looks like there is fingerprint powder on the box.
Other
on
than
these
that,
items.
I'm sorry.
On these items.
Other than that fingerprint powder, do these items appear to be in the same or substantially same condition as when you collected them on May 16th of 2013?
Yes, sir.
Any changes or alterations?
No, sir.
Your Honor, at this time I would ask to introduce State's Exhibit 50, 50A, and 50B into evidence.
Any objection? They are allowed.
Your Honor, and I also ask to publish photos 77 through 80 to the members of the jury using the screen. They've been previously introduced.
Yes, that's fine. I'm sorry, what number is that?
77 through 80.
Yes, sir.
And permission for Agent Hill to stand.
Yes.
Agent Hill, is this the area you responded to back on May 16th of 2017? That's 2013.
Yes, sir.
Right. And can you describe this general area for the members of the jury?
Okay. This is the fence line. This apartment building right here is 441 Alistair Drive. Right now, my back is to the off-ramp of 440 onto 6 Forks Road. And I'm facing Alistair Drive.
From your vantage point here, Agent Hill, approximately how far is it to that Alistair apartment complex?
Probably 100 yards, maybe 200 yards max.
Okay. And is there a road that runs in front of, between this area where the vegetation is and the complex?
Yes, you can see a little bit of it, but that's Ramblewood Drive. So, I mean, it's literally right across the street from it.
When you photographed this area, what if anything did you notice about the vegetation there in that area?
The vegetation appeared to be kind of patted down, like it's been trampled on some. So I noted that, and then although you can't really see it right now very well, those items are located right in this area.
Okay. And besides general weeds, did you notice if there was any poison ivy or any other kind of vegetation there?
I think it was poison ivy, but I'm not 100% sure.
If we could go on to 78. What do you see there, Agent Hill?
Right here is a little bit closer photo, but you can actually see the Victoria's Secret box right here at the bottom of the picture.
And then 79.
This is what we call a mid-range photo of that item. Is you got the Victoria's Secret box right here, and the iTunes card is located under it.
And if we can go to 80.
This is another mid-range photo where I just moved it a little bit so you could actually see the iTunes card.
Okay, so when you say that that you had to move the Victoria's Secret box, was it actually on top of the iTunes card?
Yes, sir, it was.
And so the iTunes card wasn't inside.
No.
In looking at the Victoria's Secret box earlier, that you mentioned that there was a bracelet inside. At any point during these photographs, did you photograph that bracelet?
Yes, sir, I believe it did.
And can you remove that bracelet for us at this point, Agent Hill? It's actually taped down.
Yeah, it's actually secured to the.
Okay. Does that appear to be the same bracelet that was found in the vegetation there on May 16th?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Agent Hill. So then that item was transferred to Agent Gold for further processing.
Yes, sir, it was.
I want to turn your attention to May 21st of 2013. Were you involved in this case on that date, sir?
Yes, sir. Detective Brady requested that I respond to 608 South Main Street in Wake Forest in reference to a residence that they wanted to process.
And what type of residence was that, sir?
It was a room in a boarding house that I think Michael McCullen was living in at the time.
And when you arrived there, what was your role in the investigation at that point?
At that point, I was basically documenting the room that he was living in and trying to identify any evidence that we could believe that was involved in this crime.
May I approach you?
Yes.
I want to show you what has been marked for identification purposes as State's Exhibit number 239. Can you identify this photograph for us, Agent Hill?
This is a photograph of the front of the boarding house that I responded to.
And then I believe you said you went into a specific room in which Michael McCullen was located.
Yes, room 17.
Describe for us, if you can, the general layout nature of that room, sir.
Basically, it's just a one-room apartment, I guess. It had a sink in there, a bed. It was kind of cluttered, and there was actually an access door located behind a little micro fridge that led into a attic area.
And as part of your duties out there, were you responsible for gathering evidence and helping with the search, I guess, of this room?
Yes, sir, I was.
And what, if anything, was found there in that room that was collected that day?
We found it was later determined to be a BB gun, but a gun, airsoft gun, a gray laptop computer. We collected several pairs of shoes and a blue pry bar.
And when you collected, when I say that computer was found, did CCBI collect that computer, or was it the Raleigh Police Department?
I believe Raleigh Police Department collected that.
Your Honor, this time I would ask to introduce State's Exhibit 239 for illustrative purposes.
Any objection? It's allowed.
And I would ask to publish 239 in the prior photograph of the silver laptop.
Yes.
Yeah, let's do 239 first and then 58. We'll publish 239 first.
All right.
Is that the residence or of Michael McCullen there, sir?
Yes, sir. This is the front of the house.
And what's the, if you can tell from that photograph, what was the name of this boarding house?
It was named Franklin Inn.
And so there were there other rooms such as the one you described for Mr. McCollum throughout this inn?
Yes, sir.
If we can go to 58. What do you see there, Agent Hill?
This is a photograph of room 17, which is the residence of Mr. McCollum.
And did you take that photograph, sir?
Yes, sir, I did.
And can you point out to us where the silver laptop was found when you entered the room? You can stand.
When I entered the room, the laptop was right here next to this little light show.
And Raleigh took it into evidence at that point.
Yes, sir.
Other than collecting those items, any other involvement with the Wake Forest location on that day?
Not at that location, no, sir.
Or did you go to a different location, Agent Hill?
Yes, sir, I did.
Where did you go at that point?
Basically, after that, we responded to the parking lot of the Walmart located at 2114 South Main Street there in Wake Forest.
And what was the purpose of responding to the Walmart there?
Detective Morris advised that they found a vehicle that they believe was the suspect's vehicle, Mr. McCollum's vehicle.
And were you able to assist in a search or documenting that vehicle?
Yes, sir, I was.
What type of vehicle was that?
It was a black Honda Civic.
And what was the general condition of that vehicle?
If I remember correctly, it was very cluttered.
And did you and Detective Morris and other Raleigh police officers go through that vehicle that evening?
Yes, sir, we did.
Was anything of evidentiary value taken out of that vehicle?
No, sir, it wasn't.
I want to turn your attention now to May 22nd, 2013 at 1:25 a.m. Were you asked to assist in this investigation on that day?
Yes, sir. I was asked to respond to the investigative division of the Raleigh Police Department.
And for what purpose did you respond to the Raleigh Police Department investigative division?
They asked me to take photographs of 3 potential suspects that they were interviewing.
Specifically, were you asked to take photographs of one Travion Smith?
Yes, sir, I was.
And is that something that y'all typically do as CCBI agents, is assist Raleigh in taking photographs of individuals or individuals that may be suspects or defendants in cases?
Yes, sir, we do.
And tell us a little bit about what you did when you responded there and photographed these individuals.
When I responded, I basically met with the investigators, Detective Gibney, who requested that I photograph Mr. Smith. I went into one of the interview rooms with Detective Gibney and basically took photographs of the overall of Mr. Smith and then took close-ups of his hands with scales.
Okay. And why did you take the close-ups of his hands?
Basically, he had several small nicks, cuts on his palms of both of his hands.
And you mentioned you took photographs of the other 2 individuals, Ronald Anthony and Sarah Redden. Did you take any specific photographs with them other than general overall photographs?
No, I don't remember. I think it's just general overalls.
And when you say general overalls, what does that?
Just basically them standing against the wall, kind of front and back most of the time.
May I approach the witness room?
Yes.
I'm going to hand you photographs that have been identified as State's Exhibits number 240 through 244. I ask that you take a look at those photographs and tell me if you recognize what they are.
These are the photographs I took of Mr. Smith on that day.
And do those photographs fairly and accurately represent what he looked like on May 22nd of 2013?
Yes, sir.
Any changes or alterations?
No, sir.
Your Honor, this time I would ask to introduce State's Exhibit 240 through 244 for illustrative purposes and permission of the public.
Any objection?
Yes.
They are allowed for illustrative purposes.
And permission for Agent Hill to stand.
Yes.
Agent Hill, who is that you see there, sir?
Mr. Smith.
Okay, and is this one of the general photographs that you took of him?
Yes, sir, it is.
And in interacting with him, Agent Hill, did you have an opportunity to form any opinion as to Mr. Smith's weight and height?
Somewhere probably, he was definitely taller than I was, so probably over 6 feet. And probably generally in between about 150, 175 pounds.
Thank you, sir. State's Exhibit 241. What do you see there, sir?
These are his hands. Typically I'll ask them to hold their hand out and get both sides of the hands.
You mentioned earlier in your testimony that part of the reason why you were asked to take photographs is that he had some nicks on his hands.
Yes, sir.
Can you point those out to the members of the jury?
There are some right here, and it's hard to tell on this one without seeing a close-up to see my hand.
Okay. We'll go to State's Exhibit 242.
Okay, these are the two on the left hand. Got one here and one here.
State's Exhibit 243.
And that is it right there.
I'm sorry.
I believe that's it right there.
And I'm gonna hand you the actual photograph if that helps to make it a little clearer.
Yeah, it looks like right here and right here. On his right hand.
And again, are those the nicks that you described earlier?
Yes, sir.
And then State's Exhibit 244.
This is just the back of his left hand.
Anything that you noted in regards to the back of his left hand?
Not that I remember. Just the palms.
Thank you, sir. And Agent Hill, you said you had the opportunity to view Sarah Redden and Ronald Anthony again that night. We may publish State's Exhibit 6, the photograph of Ronald Anthony.
Yes.
16, I'm sorry. Does that appear to be Ronald Anthony?
Yes, sir.
And in terms of size of the two individuals, they roughly the same size.
Yes, sir.
And then Sarah Redden, were both of them a little bigger than her.
Yes.
Any drastic difference in weight or size between Ronald Anthony and
Not that I remember, no, sir.
If I may have just a moment, Trevor.
Yes, sir.
Look at Agent Hill. If I may approach, Your Honor.
Yes.
For State's Exhibit 245, do you recognize this individual?
Appears to be Mr. Smith.
Okay. Does that fairly and accurately represent him about the time you saw him on May 22nd of 2013?
Yes, sir.
Your Honor, I'd ask to introduce State's Exhibit 245 as well.
Any objection? It's allowed.
When you responded to the fence line area on May 16th, Agent Hill, did you test some areas for blood?
Yes, there was a couple of dark stains on the vegetation that could have possibly looked like dried blood. So in an effort to be thorough, we tested it with a presumptive test called phenolphthalein, which resulted in a negative response.
And you did a DNA swab on the fence line as well, just to try to see if you could get anything off of there?
Yes, sir, and hopes to get some contact DNA off the fence.
To be clear, did you see anything on the fence itself that would lead you to doing a DNA swab there?
No, sir, there was actually nothing on the fence, but due to the coarseness of the metal and the evidence being located just on the other side, it was probable that somebody might have jumped the fence right there. So basically, when you're doing contact DNA, it's kind of like a blind sweep. You're hitting the areas that you think that somebody might have touched in an effort, hopefully, to get some epithelial cells. So that's what I was trying to collect.
But you did say, in terms of the area in which the Victoria's Secret box was located, it did appear that you could jump over the fence in that area.
Yeah, it appears somebody could have, yes.
Thank you, sir. No further questions.
Cross-examination.
Would it be safe to say that at the time that you were taking those pictures of Mr. Smith's hands, there was probably some reason that you took a picture of the top of that other hand?
Probably. I do remember that Detective Gibney telling me that he had poison ivy, so that might have been why,
Okay.
but I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Weller.
No, sir. Thank you.
All right, sir, you may step down.
Thank you.
Further evidence for the state?
State calls Agent 4 in.
Do you solemnly swear the testimony you give this court shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Now please be seated.
Mr. Weller? Ms. Shikita?
Please state your name.
Carla Ferran.
And Ms. Fran, how are you employed?
I'm an agent with the City County Bureau of Identification.
And generally speaking, we've heard from several CCBI agents, but what are some of your duties and responsibilities?
The collection, documentation, and preservation of evidence.
How long have you been employed at CCBI?
5 years.
And in that 5 years or prior to, have you had training in regards to crime scene processing and collection of evidence?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us just generally about that?
I have my bachelor's, and then I also completed a 4-month training program through the Bureau, and then I also have over 300 hours of forensic training in various topics.
Were you employed and on duty with CCBI on May 14th of 2013?
Yes, ma'am.
On that occasion, did you have occasion to go to the area 441 Allister?
I did.
And do you recall what was going on when you were called to that scene?
Yes, ma'am.
Can you tell us about that?
I was called out there to assist in they wanted me to process an area they believed that had been burglarized, and it to be in connection with a homicide investigation.
So at the time that you were actually called in, had folks already from CCBI already gotten to the scene to your knowledge?
Yes, agents Gold and Galloway were already out there.
We've heard a lot of testimony over the course of the last week or so that the first call came to sort of the upstairs apartment, and then they recognized there was a different crime scene downstairs. Is that
That's
safe to
correct.
say?
Mm-hmm.
And so when you got to the Allister apartment complex, what were some of your initial duties and responsibilities?
Overall photographs, and I was focused on the downstairs apartment, which was also the leasing office. So just doing our regular walkthrough, looking for things that we noticed, points of entry, evidence that initially just on the exterior of the scene before we went internally.
And is that usual or standard procedure to process sort of the outside of a particular crime scene and then go inside?
Yes, ma'am.
And why is that?
You're just working your way in. It's just you want to break it up and try to do things as methodical as possible.
And when you're observing the crime scene, or your scene initially, do you make documentation of the scene as you initially find it?
I do through photographs.
Your Honor, may I approach the witness?
Yes.
I'm going to show you a set of photographs starting with State's Exhibit 246 and ask if you look at 246, starting with 246, what is that a photograph of?
The exterior of the apartment building.
Did you take several other photographs around the whole building?
I did. Normally we try to go all around and get all sides.
And some of them have already been introduced into evidence, but this is, you would have documented all the angles.
Yes, ma'am.
State's Exhibits 247, 248, 249, and 250. Do you recognize those?
I do.
And what are those?
That's the exterior of the apartment. This is right down by the leasing office, by the point of entry window.
And you use the word point of entry. What does that mean?
It's what we believe to be the point of entry of how the suspects got in and out of the apartment.
And do these photographs, State's Exhibit 247 through 250, document the area around which you've described as the point of entry window?
Yes, ma'am.
Would they help to illustrate that to the jury?
Yes.
Taking your attention now to 260, 261, 262, 263, and 264. Are those also some of your external photographs?
They are, and they're also of the leasing office.
And starting with 260 through 264, do they appear to get sort of all the way around the outside of the leasing office?
They do, yes.
And would they help to illustrate how you found it that morning?
Yes, ma'am.
Your Honor, this time the state would move to introduce State's Exhibit 246 through 264. That's not. 246 through, 264 into evidence.
Any objection?
Did I miss
There's a
something?
little bit of a disconnect, I think. I think we go from 250 to 260. Yeah.
But,
Yeah,
Right.
it's supposed to be 50.
Sorry. My math skills are 250, 251, 252, 253, 254. Am I on the right numbers?
That'll work.
And they may be a bit out of order, but all of these are the external of the leasing office. Is that safe to say?
Yes.
So you're on, this time the state would move to introduce 246 through 255 for illustrative purposes.
Any objection? All right, they are allowed for illustrative purposes.
And I would ask permission to publish them via the projector.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, right here, may Agent Ford stand. Can you show us the angle of the building here in 246?
I'm standing on the corner, so a street is behind me, and this down here, that's the natural area where the screens are in that other photo, so this is the leasing office down there.
And 247.
And that's the corner I was just standing on, so this is just the other end of the sidewalk, and this is the leasing office.
And you had talked about finding some screens. Do you see those in 247?
Yes, ma'am, these are the screens right here.
248? And again, is that just further back?
Yes, it's just me taking a couple steps to the right, it's the same view.
And you've described a point of entry window. Are these the windows that you believe to be the point of entry here?
No, ma'am.
Okay, 249. Are those the close-ups of the screen?
That's what they are.
And would that have been the condition in which you first found them when you got to the scene?
Yes, ma'am, that's it.
250? Are those the windows that we just saw a couple
Yes.
slides back? And so, as a crime scene agent, do you want to take sort of overall photographs and then focus in?
Yes, ma'am.
And do you have better terms for
And
them?
we go overall, mid-range, and up close is what we refer to them as, just trying to build it in.
And State's Exhibit 251. What is this angle?
Okay, this is the parking lot, so first I was standing up on this corner, and then you can kind of see the screens right there, so this is just me backing away. This is still the leasing office, The natural and the screens, and those are the two windows that you just saw the close-up of.
Using State's Exhibit 251, this walkway, is there a bit of an incline up towards the street where that brick wall is?
Oh, yes, going that way?
Yes.
Yes, there's a bit of an incline.
And just, can you describe generally, is this like a retaining wall, or how would you describe
That, I
that?
would say that a retaining wall, yes.
And then coming around here, this apartment down on the bottom right-hand corner, what is that?
That's still the leasing office.
And do you know where Ms. Huggins-Jones' apartment was in relation to that, looking at this photo?
Just above it, right here.
And looking at State's Exhibit 251, just to the left of the leasing office, can you see two dryer vents?
Yes.
And 252? And is this the opposite side?
Yes, this is just to the right. That's the same patio, the lower level patio, and then that's just the stairway.
253? And now we're going back at Lauren's a little bit, huh?
But this is just to the left of where we just were.
And looking at the windows that are depicted in 253, is there anything unusual to you in that photograph?
Well, this is when I refer to the point of entry window. That's this window right here. That's the one I'm talking about.
And why did you think that may be a point of entry?
Because we found it standing open just like that. And the other windows were still closed and locked.
Closed and locked?
Yes.
254. Is that sort of head on into the
Into the patio, the same one.
And looking at this photograph, what was the condition of the patio doors, if you recall, when you got there?
It was open, as is.
And 255. And again, is that sort of a backup of the
Right.
opposite side now that you can see the patio as well?
Right.
Did you collect any items outside that particular area?
I did.
And what were those?
I collected.
Larger items.
Oh, I collected the two screens from the natural area.
Yeah, Rich Judge.
Yes.
To show you first, your item 1, which I'll mark the outside of, is 256. And do you recognize that?
Yes, ma'am.
How do you recognize it? Just by looking at the outside?
On all of my evidence, I have a label in which is printed the case, our case number, the other agency's case number, the kind of case, the name of the victim, the item number, and a description of what is inside.
And while we're talking about that, Agent Gold is processing the upstairs. Is there a different case number assigned with her case and your case?
Yes, yes, we did that to try to make it more simple as far as item numbers.
And so when, for example, we are asking Agent Gold about item 1, you would have your own one and she would have
That's
one.
correct, yes.
But this is your item 1, and what is it?
It's one of the window screens from the natural area.
And if you could, I think there's some scissors open at State 601. 256, your one.
Maybe.
That's stuff on her face. Very good. And State's Exhibit 256A, I'll mark that. Is that one of the screens that you collected?
Yes, ma'am.
And in addition to collecting it, did you try and process it in any way at some point?
I did.
Okay. And would that have been there on scene?
No, I collected it and took it back to the lab for processing.
And what kind of processing were you trying to do on State's Exhibit 256A?
I processed it for latent prints as well as for a contact DNA evidence.
And we talked a little bit earlier about touch DNA. Is that the same
Yes.
sort of thing as
Yes, ma'am.
contact DNA? So and other than the latent powder that it looks like is on there, does it appear to be in the same condition as when you last processed it?
It does.
And obviously it was in a sealed
Yes.
when we got here today. You're at this time the state would move to introduce State's Exhibit 256 and 56A.
Any objection? Allowed.
And while the screen is in front of you, You talked about fingerprints, processing for latent fingerprints, and we heard some testimony about that. Did you put the powder down?
I did. I actually super glued it
Okay.
first in the super glue chamber, and then I processed it with powder.
And why would you do that, for example, on this item?
Because I was trying to be able to see where I could possibly swab for contact DNA. So if I would put in the super glue chamber first, it kind of seals whatever evidence is there. So when I add powder, that I could actually see where I needed to process it for the contact DNA.
And with respect to the DNA samples, can you describe generally how you go about doing that?
You just use a sterile sterile cotton swab, put some water on it, and then you just swab the area.
And which would you do first? Is there a process that would be better for collecting those two?
Yes, well, you can super glue it first and powder as long as you use clean, if it stays clean, and so, and that's what I did.
But would you fingerprint it first or do the touch DNA first?
Well, in this case, I fingerprinted it first so I could see where I needed to do the touch DNA.
Because
Yeah.
you want to do it where there is a fingerprint?
Where they actually touched, yes.
And showing you next 257, ask if you recognize that.
Yes, it appears to be the other screen.
And this again was one of the two that was pictured in the
Yes.
photographs that you just did?
Yes, ma'am.
And if you could open States Exhibit 257.
Yeah.
There's the set of them too. And 257A I'll put on the outside of here. After collecting this at the scene, did you again do any later processing on it?
Yes, ma'am. I did the same process for this screen as I did the other one.
And did you label them like screen 1 or 2? How did you make
I
differentiation
did
between
screen
the two?
1 and 2, and I believe that it said this was screen 2 and that was screen 1
Okay.
on the label.
And again, to the best you were able to, did you keep it in the same condition?
Right.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
And if I could, Your Honor, again, publish States Exhibit 249.
Yes.
Are these the two screens that you collected there?
They are.
Okay. And one actually seems to be more folded in that photograph. Your Honor, this time the state would move to introduce States Exhibit 257A and 257.
Any objection? They are allowed.
After you document the outside of the scene, what did you do next?
Then I walked through the interior of the scene, and
Go ahead.
and I also took photographs of the interior as well.
And when you photograph the interior of the scene, do you do that initially in the initial steps of your investigation?
Yes, ma'am. You go ahead and try to photograph what you can to document the scene as you find it when you arrive.
I'm going to show you a series of photographs that I'll start marking with 258 and go as I go along so as not to get ahead of myself. 258, 259, 260, 261, 262, 263, and 264, and ask if you recognize all of these photographs.
I do.
And what are these photographs of?
They appear to be the photographs I took of the interior of the leasing office.
And what kinds of areas were you trying to document, or were you trying to document the entire apartment?
The entire apartment.
And did you know at the time that you went there what this apartment was actually being used for?
Yes.
And what was that?
A leasing office.
And these exhibits, states exhibits 258 through 264, do they fairly and accurately represent the way the inside of the apartment looked prior to doing any processing?
Yes, ma'am.
And would they help to illustrate that to the jury?
They would.
Your Honor, this time the state would move to introduce 258 through 264 for illustrative purposes.
Any objection? They are allowed.
And would ask permission to publish those via the monitor.
Yes.
And again, would ask if Agent Ferran can stand.
Yes.
States 258, can you, and Madam Clerk, can we dim the lights a bit? Can you tell the jury where you are and what this is a photograph of?
So this is the entryway to the leasing office. So when you saw that breezeway in the overall photos with the stairway going up, this entrance is located just off that breezeway. So that's the front door just opened, and it leads into, that's the kitchen area right there.
And 259?
It's just a little bit further and a couple steps inside, a little bit closer up with the kitchen.
And looking straight into what appears to be the kitchen area, this drawer, was that the way you found it in its outstretched
Yes, ma'am.
arc? 260? Where is this?
This is a spare bedroom, and it was when you walked into the door, it was to the left.
And these drawers again, is that the condition in which you found them?
Yes, this is just how I found it.
And including whatever this is a
Yeah,
picture?
it's a picture
Okay,
frame.
picture frame on the floor. 261? Is that the same room or have you left?
It's the same room, it's just from the opposite side.
And so this is the chest of drawers we saw in the last photograph?
Yes, ma'am.
262? What is this a photograph of?
This is the living room, so this is if I'm standing in the kitchen, looking out towards the patio. That's the parking lot I was standing in earlier when I was showing the exterior photos.
And is this the condition in which you found the sliding glass doors when you first got to the apartment?
Yes.
And 263? Where are we looking now?
This is in a little hallway, and that is the leasing office, like where they had the desk with the computer where the agent would have sat.
264. And what is that?
And that's inside of that same office.
And is this the condition that you found this desk when you first got there?
It is.
Okay. And you had described earlier a window that was open.
Mm-hmm.
Was that in this room, that is the office room, or in the spare bedroom that you described earlier?
It was in the office.
After documenting the outside of the scene, you documented the external area, you photographed the inside of the apartment. What did you do next?
I started processing the exterior portion.
And when you say processing the exterior, what kinds of things were you looking for at that point?
Just things that are a little bit more detailed than what you don't see when you first walk up. For instance, we'll go ahead and start putting down the placards to mark the evidence that we first saw. And then we just get a little bit closer, start looking for latent evidence and any other trace evidence that might come up.
And in this case, were there items that you documented or took further processing of on the external area of the apartment?
Yes.
You heard my approach, would you?
Yes.
Okay. I'm going to show you another series of photographs, starting with State's Exhibit 265. And 268. Ask if you recognize first these four photographs, 5 and 6, 7 and 8.
I do.
And first, starting with these two photographs, What are these first two photographs of?
That's the point of entry window and what we found to be suspected blood in the windowsill.
And you had talked about using placards. What's the purpose for using a placard?
To make it easier for when you just look at the overall scene to be able to point out certain items of evidence or interest.
And in State's Exhibit 265, there appears to be a number. What is that number?
5.
And then 266, is this that more close-up of 265?
It is.
In addition to the placard, have you put anything else or done anything else to document your findings in 266?
I did. I put a scale down beside the suspected area.
And then moving now to 267 and 268, what are these photographs of?
It's also of the point of entry window and another area of suspected blood on the windowsill.
And so you talked about, I marked this with 5 because I found something. Do you use a different marker when you find another potential suspected blood?
I do.
And so in this case, how did you document those?
I went sequentially, so from 5, then the next one I found I went to number 6.
Similarly to the last two, 257, is 258 a close-up of that?
It is with the scale added.
And will these help to illustrate how you found that point of entry window and some items of concern to you?
Yes.
At this time, the state would move to introduce 265 through 67 for illustrative purposes.
Any objection?
No.
They're allowed for illustrative purposes. All right, we'll stop, unless you're going to publish those.
I can do it after I'm done with this. I've
All right,
plenty more.
then we'll go ahead and recess, ladies and gentlemen, until 2:30. So please recall the instructions I've given you previously. Leave your notepads in your chairs. Gather in the deliberation room at 2:30. Everyone else, please remain seated. Outside the presence of the jury, are there matters that we need to take up for?
Again, Judge, I think I misspoke. It's 265 through 268 that I'd asked for illustrative purposes, which might have been Ms. Dew's hesitation.
I was totally confused there.
All right, that's what I have written down, but, so that's what was allowed, 265 through 268. Is that correct, Madam Clerk? All right. Was I to get a report from
Anne Marie Evans.
Yes.
Yes, sir. We need to pull it out of the school records. We can do that right now.
All right, I just didn't want to forget about it or make sure that you hadn't given it to me, and I just set it on a stack somewhere, so.
And my other point of confusion was sometimes there's been some difference about whether, but it's all illustrative purposes up through 268, even the one with the scale.
I offered it for substantive.
So that would be the other thing I was somewhat confused about. So the numbers I was confused about, and I was also confused because I was thinking that one of those items, because it included the scale, was going to be admitted for a different purpose, and I only heard illustrative. So, that's why I was confused.
Not on this one.
Right,
Okay,
the
now-
only,
yes,
right, the
no.
only one with the scale that you specifically talked about was 233, which I allowed for substantive purposes, but other items that have scales in them have simply been illustrative, so that's what my notes reflect.
Yeah, and I was just confused because the numbers were off and that, anyhow, thank you.
All right, very good. Then we'll be in recess until 2:30.